Hey everyone, and thank you so very much for being with me here today on this video. This is a little bit different. This video is going to be completely unscripted, raw, real, so I may misspeak or anything like that. Whatever. That's the joy of doing this kind of video. I get to be a bit more relaxed in my dealings with it. So yeah, if you noticed, I did a little kind of teaser trailer video for my most recent upload here, and just wanted to talk about this particular topic here. This is actually something that very recently here within this last week that came to me for an idea for a video, and it's more of my thoughts and opinions on things, and especially my passion for this YouTube channel and why I do it and stuff like that. Especially being so young. I mean, I'm only 34, and I've lived in Michigan for just about my entire life. But I definitely want to talk about some things here and just kind of, I don't know, share it with younger generation too, because I feel like this is something that is so overlooked, at least for me in my state. Maybe if there's viewers in Canada, they would understand with this too, being so close to the Great Lakes. But yeah, this video is mostly for people who live in Michigan or at least want to know about the Great Lakes at all. So yeah, with that, I will get started. Kind of, I fell in love with this particular topic, the Great Lakes, shipping and freighters. Gosh, must be 3, maybe 4 years ago. And let's say 4 years ago, that makes me 30 years old. I felt a bit foolish not realizing the vast amount of lives of people that came before me. Hence why I named this video Legacy. The legacy of the freighters, the ships, the schooners, the canalers, all the different various ships that were operating on the lakes, and with that, of course, all the tragedies that followed with them. And I guess my love, of course, kind of started when I grew up going to Lake Michigan quite a bit, and to me, living in Michigan and going to the lake, massive lake, it looks like an ocean, but that was my better understanding of an ocean, was Lake Michigan, because I went there so much. And it was gorgeous. It's gorgeous. There's miles upon miles of water and nice sandy beaches here full of zebra mussels at the time. But you'd walk on the sand, it'd make that squish noise between your feet. Maybe that's something that only happens here in Michigan, but when you walk in the sand, it makes squishing noises between your feet. Pretty cool, pretty fun. But anyway, parents would take me up to Mackinac and Whitefish Point. I prominently remember that, and Lake Superior. And I went to the the museum up there at Whitefish Point, the Great Lakes Maritime History Museum up there. And of course, that's when you learned about the Edmund Fitzgerald, the most well-known shipwreck on the Great Lakes. And I didn't think much of it as a child, but going up there after getting married with my wife and really, actually, maybe it was a maturity thing, I don't know, or maybe it was putting myself in the perspective of these people, the sailors, the passengers, the crew members, of honestly what they go through. I know not every single ship that has sunk on the Great Lakes, people have died on it. There's many that survived. They didn't lose any lives, but there are hundreds into the thousands that didn't make it. And I don't know what it was. At first it was the Edmund Fitzgerald. I'm like, I've heard of this, but barely heard about this. And then learned about the Daniel J. Morrell, and then the Carl D. Bradley. Those were like the big three that I really spent more time thinking about. And this is before I started doing this channel, that I was like, so these people, long before I came along, went through a horrific, terrible experience, and most, if not all, of the men on these ships died. And it was, I don't know what it was. I don't know what the bug was that bit me, but I couldn't stop thinking about that. Maybe, now, especially, I've felt the water temperature in Lake Michigan during especially early spring. And my dad and I would go looking for Uper lights kind of in the northern area of Lake Michigan. But after being in the water in Lake Michigan in early spring, my legs are pink and numb. And I can't feel it no more after a certain amount of time. And I'm thinking, okay, now what about, say, Lake Superior, where it is very, very cold. I think I have the it gets down to water in temperature range in Lake Superior is from 32 degrees to 51 degrees, but and then the average water temperature for Lake Michigan is 36.9 Fahrenheit. Like it's cold. And putting myself in the thought process of I'm on a ship, big ship, and let's say, and this is where I come into the Kamloops. That was in the 20s, the 1920s, as you saw in my post the other day, 1927, I believe. And they were out in a horrific blizzard, freezing. It's cold enough in wintertime being on land, let alone being out on the water where ice is caking up on the ship and the water is frigid cold. I mean, you have to think of an ice bath, like the coldest water you've ever been in. And I can at least say, for me, being in Lake Superior a few times, even in summer, it is brisk, it is cold. And now let alone having that in wintertime, wow, what these people had to suffer through, had to endure. I think it's a perspective that's lost on a lot of people, or adults and younger generation too, at least in the state of Michigan here, because a lot of the main stuff of Michigan is cherries and football and campfires, which is, it's fine, it's whatever, but like, guys, we live in the Great Lakes state, and I, being 34, didn't even, or being in my 30s when I really started to get invested in this subject, didn't realize the lives and the history that had been going on long before I came along. And I felt a bit ashamed, I felt ignorant but ashamed, but also surprised that this isn't around more, these ships and the legacy of the people. Because when you start putting faces to these ships of the people that were on it, especially when they all tragically lost their lives on it, it sits differently with you. And it wouldn't leave me, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. I definitely feel, excuse me, that this is a topic that should be more well known and taught, and that's one of the big reasons why I do this channel and why I pick all these, I guess you could say, obscure ship stories. That's one of my favorite comments from you guys, is like, oh, I've never heard of that. I've never heard of that story, or holy cow, what happened to those poor people? I love it, because, like, yeah, there's more to the Great Lakes than their big masses of fresh water, and they're pretty, but then also, and I mean no disrespect by saying this at all, but it kind of feels like the Edmund Fitzgerald, because of the Gordon Lightfoot song, I don't know, kind of hogs all what little attention there is about the maritime history on the Great Lakes. And I'm not saying that in a disrespectful way or anything bad. I'm just merely saying, like, guys, there is more than just the Edmund Fitzgerald. There are tons of ships and horrible stories of people, not surviving, going through terrible ordeals. And that's what brought me to the big three of the Daniel J. Morrell, the Carl D. Bradley. I mean, Dennis Hale was the only survivor, if I'm correct, on the Daniel J. Morale, and then I don't think anybody survived on the Carl D. Bradley. I could be wrong. It's been a minute since I've looked up the information on that shipwreck, but it was just it's been fascinating doing this channel, putting the faces of these people who were real humans. They had lives of their own, families of their own, friends. They were earning a living, doing their own thing, and it just, I don't, at least living in this day, I can't look at the lakes any differently. I can't look at Lake Michigan as just a casual vacation spot to relax at and kick my feet up. I look out at the Lake Michigan or Superior when my wife and I go up north, especially in Mackinac, and I look out at it and I'm like, wow, what stories, what history do you hold that was going on in you long before I came along? And just a kind of like a privilege, or kind of like it's just a sobering, honoring feeling for everyone, every person who's lost their lives in the Great Lakes. And I give lots of credit to the Edmund Fitzgerald, because that's what started my fascination with this story, and those 29 men, and then the other 3, and then the Kamloops. The Kamloops was the biggest one, and then I do more research into the Kamloops, and for whatever reason, people only comment on the Kamloops knowing the body in the engine room, because it was adipocere, the sopification of the body when it slowly gets frozen, decomposing in that cold of fresh water. And there's video and pictures of it. Him, sorry, I should say him, it is not an it. And people, it just, I don't know, it bugs me when people just refer to him as Old Whitey. Like, dude, that's a real person. That was a real person who suffered through an unimaginable, horrific night to be in 30, 40 foot high waves out on Lake Superior in frigid, freezing temperatures. And to be, I can only imagine being in the engine room of the Kamloops as she's sinking, and the lights go out, the ice cold water rushes in, and you essentially drowned in the dark, in panic, in terror. And I don't think people realize that when they look at that. I just get passionate about it because I try to put myself in that situation. That's how I connect with these ships and the stories and the people that have come long before me, as I try to put myself in that situation, in that story, in that particular moment. And I'm like, oh, I need to treat this with the utmost care and respect when I present these online to people. Like, this is not just a casual passing fancy or a stupid, silly ghost story. This was a terrible thing that happened, and to be in those moments, going through that, my gosh, just and I feel a love, for these people. It's no secret that I'm a God-fearing man. I'm a Jesus-loving, born-again Christian, and for me and my faith, I hold these stories in hopes that these people, knew the Lord, but knew the Lord for sure, and then in their final moments. But because I can think of what would I be doing in that situation. I would be praying to the Lord, trusting in Him in these horrific moments. And that's the love I feel. That's the love I feel for these people and these stories, and that's how I try to present each and every story that I come through on here. And it's hard sometimes because, especially with the older stories you get, there's not as much information, or it's hard for me to find any, if any, pictures of captains or crew members. I love, anytime I can find them, I jump on the opportunity to post them, because it's like, hey, yes, here's the ship, but also here's the people that you put the faces to with the ship, so it hits home that much more strongly. And that's a legacy. That's a life. That's a time before we were here that was being experienced and going through. So, yeah, but this is the kind of video that came to me here recently, and I definitely wanted to do this as a just a quick passion rant. You know, it's not a ship video in the sense of I've picked a particular ship out, but it was more of why I'm doing this channel and the things that I've observed, you know, being a young guy like me. But then my hopes are for younger generation below me, like, hey, you know, next time you see Lake Michigan, or you see Lake Superior, or Huron, or Erie, or Ontario, or, you know, just like, it's not just a casual vacation spot. It's not just a campfire on the lake shore. It's not just a s'mores and hot dogs, you know, put on the football game type of, like, you know, try and realize, holy cow, this lake holds a lot of history, a lot of impressive things, and a lot of tragic things as well. And that's just me. That's just my passion kicking up, blurting through. And I wanted to share that with you guys in this little rant video. I didn't want it to be hours and hours and hours of me blabbing, which I could do when it comes to the Great Lakes ships. But I've enjoyed this a lot, this channel, and doing these things. I want to do this as long as I can. You know, there's days where I'm like, man, I'm struggling to find a ship to go into detail and do a story on. Believe it or not, there's been a few times where I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't be running out of ships to do, or stories, and oh nope, up pops one that I'd never heard of and never knew anything about. I'm like, well, it looks like we found our next ship video. I also love your guys' comments and recommendations and topics. I look to them quite often for inspiration, and thank you for bearing with me when I slaughter name pronunciations at times, whether they're the rivers or counties or the ship itself, or last names. Oh my goodness, last names are, sometimes they are, I give it my best shot, but boy, they are a doozy sometimes. But yeah, I've been having a lot of fun doing this. I don't have any plans of stopping, and at least not for a long while. And if you're still with me in this video, thank you for listening to me rant, but also hearing my heart behind why I do this, and for the legacy of the people in the families, because I know there is also lots of families that are still alive today, from especially ships from the past that lost somebody or several people on them. And that's why I do these. I love doing it. I'd always be open to do an interview of somebody. It was like, hey, my great uncle went down on the blah 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 ship, and boy, do I got a story for you. Please hit me up. I would love to do an interview over Skype or something, or however we could make it work for that. That would be, that's the best for me. I love these ships. I love the Great Lakes, but more importantly, I want the people to be known through it and what they went through. So, but yeah, I think I have blabbed enough. I wanted this video to be a bit of a unscripted free rant, and we'll see if I do another one here soon. But I think the next video will be again another ship. So thank you guys. God bless you all. Thank you so much for listening to me, and do stay tuned for the next episode on Songs of the Great Lakes. So see you until then.